All right, let's get right into this because the numbers are absolutely staggering and they're getting worse by the week. Foreclosure filings in Florida have skyrocketed over the past year, and we're now at levels that are genuinely alarming. According to recent data, Florida is leading the nation in foreclosure rates. Not just high, the highest. More homes are entering foreclosure in Florida than in any other state, both in raw numbers and per capita. And the trajectory is accelerating, meaning it's getting worse faster, not stabilizing or improving. Let me give you some specific numbers to illustrate just how bad this is. In some Florida counties, foreclosure filings are up 50, 60, even 70% compared to last year. In Miami-Dade County alone, there are thousands of active foreclosure cases. Broward County, Hillsborough County, Orange County, all of them are seeing massive spikes. Court systems are overwhelmed with foreclosure cases. Legal aid organizations are swamped with desperate homeowners looking for help. This is a full-blown crisis, and DeSantis is desperate because he knows what this means politically and economically. Let's talk about why this is happening, because it's not one single cause. It's a perfect storm of factors that have converged to create a foreclosure tsunami. First, and most obviously, the insurance crisis. Homeowners' insurance costs in Florida have exploded to levels that are simply unaffordable for average families. When your insurance goes from $4,000 a year to $20,000 or $25,000 a year, that's an additional $1,500 or more per month on top of your mortgage payment. Think about what that means for a typical family budget. Your mortgage payment might be $2,000 a month. Add $1,500 for insurance, plus property taxes, plus HOA fees if applicable, and suddenly your total housing cost is $4,000 or $4,500 a month. Can a family earning $80,000 or $90,000 a year afford that? No, they can't. So they start missing payments. First the insurance, then the mortgage. And once you're behind on your mortgage, the foreclosure process starts. Second factor, property values crashing. A lot of Florida homeowners bought at the peak of the market in 2021 or 2022 when prices were astronomical. They paid top dollar, often in bidding wars, often waiving inspections and contingencies. Now those same properties are worth 20 or 30% less than they paid. They're underwater, owing more than the home is worth. When you're underwater and you're struggling to afford the payments, walking away starts to make financial sense. Why keep paying a $3,000 mortgage plus $2,000 in insurance on a home that's worth $100,000 less than you owe? If you're going to lose money either way, some people are choosing to cut their losses and let the home go into foreclosure. These are called strategic defaults, and they're increasing rapidly in Florida. Third factor, adjustable rate mortgages resetting. Some homeowners bought with adjustable rate mortgages when rates were low. Now those arms are resetting to much higher rates, dramatically increasing monthly payments. A mortgage payment that was $1,800 at 3% might jump to $2,800 at 7%. That $1,000 per month increase combined with skyrocketing insurance costs is breaking family budgets and pushing people into foreclosure. Fourth factor, job losses and economic stress. Florida's economy is slowing. The real estate and construction sectors, which employ huge numbers of Floridians, are in serious decline. When housing markets crash, all the related industries suffer. Real estate agents, mortgage brokers, construction workers, contractors, building supply stores, property management companies, all of them are cutting jobs. Unemployed or underemployed people can't pay their mortgages, so foreclosures increase. Fifth factor, the end of forbearance and pandemic protections. During COVID, there were moratoriums on foreclosures and forbearance programs that let people pause mortgage payments. Those programs have ended. People who were in forbearance now have to catch up on missed payments or work out loan modifications. Many can't afford to catch up, so they're entering foreclosure now. There's a wave of delayed foreclosures from the pandemic era that's hitting now on top of new foreclosures from current economic conditions. And DeSantis is desperate because he knows foreclosures are devastating on multiple levels. First, the human cost. Every foreclosure is a family losing their home, their stability, their American dream. We're talking about millions of Floridians directly affected by this crisis, either facing foreclosure themselves or knowing people who are. The emotional and psychological toll is enormous. The stress of facing foreclosure causes health problems, relationship problems, mental health crises. Second, the economic cost. Foreclosures destroy neighborhoods and property values. When foreclosed homes sit vacant, they deteriorate. Lawns aren't maintained. Pools turn green. Properties attract squatters and crime. This drives down values of surrounding homes, which can push more homeowners underwater, which leads to more foreclosures. It's a vicious cycle that's incredibly destructive. Third, the political cost to DeSantis. He built his brand on Florida being successful, on his policies creating prosperity. A foreclosure crisis of this magnitude completely destroys that narrative. It's visual, undeniable proof that things are not okay in Florida. Empty houses with foreclosure notices, families being evicted, neighborhoods deteriorating. These are images that tell a story DeSantis can't spin away. Let's talk about what's happening in specific areas, because the foreclosure crisis is affecting different parts of Florida in different ways. In South Florida, particularly Miami-Dade and Broward counties, you have some of the highest home prices in the state combined with some of the highest insurance costs. This is creating a perfect storm where even relatively affluent homeowners are struggling. The foreclosures in South Florida include some very expensive properties, multi-million-dollar homes where the owners simply can't keep up with the costs. In Tampa Bay, the foreclosure spike is being driven partly by Hurricane Ian damage that insurance didn't fully cover. Homeowners who had to pay out of pocket for repairs burned through savings and now can't afford ongoing costs. Plus, Tampa Bay saw some of the most dramatic price increases during the boom, meaning lots of homeowners bought at the peak and are now deeply underwater. In Orlando, the foreclosure crisis is hitting working-class and middle-class neighborhoods particularly hard. These are families who are already stretching to afford homes, and the insurance increases push them over the edge. Orange County is seeing foreclosure rates that are shocking, with some zip codes having foreclosure rates double or triple the state average. On the Gulf Coast, in areas like Fort Myers, Naples, Sarasota, you have the combination of hurricane damage, insurance crisis, and climate risk concerns all converging. Some properties that were damaged by Hurricane Ian are in foreclosure because owners couldn't afford to rebuild. Other properties that weren't damaged are in foreclosure because insurance is unaffordable and values are falling as buyers flee high-risk coastal areas. In the Panhandle, areas that were hit by Hurricane Michael in 2018 and still haven't fully recovered are now facing a new wave of foreclosures. Some properties that were repaired are being foreclosed because owners can't afford insurance. Other properties that were never properly repaired are being abandoned. There are neighborhoods in the Panhandle that look like disaster zones years after the storm because of a combination of inadequate recovery and ongoing foreclosure crisis. Even in Central Florida, in areas that don't face hurricane risk directly, foreclosures are spiking. Why? Because the overall economic decline in Florida is affecting everyone. When construction and real estate industries collapse, the economic pain spreads throughout the state. People lose jobs, businesses close, consumers spending drops, foreclosures increase, even in areas that aren't directly affected by insurance crisis or hurricane damage. Now, let's talk about DeSantis' response, or more accurately, his desperate flailing as the crisis spirals out of control. He's tried to downplay the severity, claiming that foreclosures are just a normal market correction. But the numbers are way beyond normal. This is a crisis. He's tried to blame homeowners, suggesting people who are facing foreclosure made poor decisions or bought more house than they could afford. This is offensive and inaccurate. Most of these homeowners made reasonable decisions based on the information they had. They couldn't have predicted that insurance would triple or quadruple in price. He's tried to blame the federal government, claiming that federal policies or federal regulations are somehow responsible for Florida's foreclosure crisis. This is absurd. The foreclosure crisis is directly caused by state-level policy failures, particularly around insurance and climate adaptation. The federal government didn't force Florida to ignore climate change. The federal government didn't force Florida to let insurance companies abandon the market. These are DeSantis' failures. He's tried to blame insurance companies, which is rich coming from a governor who spent years doing everything the insurance industry asked for. He passed tort reform that made it harder for homeowners to sue insurers. He loosened regulations on insurance companies. He gave them everything they wanted, and they still fled the market because the fundamental problem is climate risk, not regulation. Now DeSantis wants to blame them for a crisis his policies helped create. What DeSantis hasn't done is implement real solutions that would actually help homeowners facing foreclosure. He hasn't created meaningful foreclosure prevention programs. He hasn't provided significant state funding to help people keep their homes. He hasn't reformed insurance in ways that would actually lower costs for homeowners. He hasn't implemented the kind of comprehensive intervention that a crisis of this magnitude requires. Why not? Partly ideology. DeSantis believes in free markets and limited government intervention. He's ideologically opposed to big government programs that help people in crisis. So even as foreclosures skyrocket, he resists doing the kind of large-scale government intervention that would actually make a difference. Party politics. Helping people facing foreclosure might require raising taxes or reallocating spending from other priorities. It might require admitting that his previous policies failed. It might require cooperation with the federal government or accepting federal help. All of these things are politically difficult for DeSantis, so he's not doing them even though the crisis is getting worse. And partly, he might just not know what to do. The foreclosure crisis is part of a larger systemic breakdown in Florida's housing market. Fixing it would require addressing insurance, climate adaptation, economic development, regulatory reform, all simultaneously. That's a massive undertaking that requires expertise, resources, and political will. DeSantis seems to lack all three. So instead of solutions, we get desperation. Reports indicate he's privately panicking as foreclosure numbers climb. He's reportedly furious with his staff for not preventing or solving the crisis. He's lashing out at critics who point out his policy failures. He's scrambling to find someone to blame. But desperation and blame shifting don't help families losing their homes. Let's talk about what happens next, because the foreclosure crisis is going to get worse before it gets better. We're still in the early stages of this. The insurance crisis is not resolved, it's getting worse. Property values in many areas are still falling. Economic conditions in Florida are deteriorating, not improving. All of the factors driving foreclosures are still present and intensifying. Experts predict that foreclosures could double or triple from current levels over the next year or two. We could see tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of additional Florida homeowners lose their homes. This would be a human catastrophe and an economic disaster. The impact on neighborhoods will be severe. High foreclosure rates lead to blight, crime, and community breakdown. Property values fall as neighborhoods fill with vacant and deteriorating properties. Local governments lose tax revenue, forcing cuts to services, which makes areas even less desirable. It's a downward spiral that's very difficult to reverse. The impact on the broader Florida economy will be devastating. The wealth destruction from foreclosures will be enormous. Florida homeowners will lose billions of dollars in equity. That's billions of dollars that could have been spent in the economy, saved for retirement, passed to children. Instead, it's just gone, destroyed by the foreclosure crisis. The construction and real estate sectors will continue to suffer, which will lead to more job losses, which will lead to more foreclosures. The negative feedback loops are powerful and destructive. Banks and lenders will tighten credit, making it harder for anyone to get a mortgage, which will further depress housing demand and prices. For homeowners currently facing foreclosure or worried they might, here's what you need to know. First, don't ignore the situation. Contact your lender immediately when you realize you're having trouble making payments. Many lenders would rather work out a modification or forbearance than foreclose. Second, understand your options. You might be able to refinance, modify your loan, do a short sale, or deed in lieu of foreclosure. Each has different implications for your credit and financial future. Third, get help. Contact HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. They provide free or low-cost counseling for homeowners in distress. Contact legal aid if you're facing foreclosure. Many areas have foreclosure defense programs. Don't try to navigate this alone. Fourth, be realistic about your situation. If you're significantly underwater and can't afford the payments, continuing to throw money at a losing situation might not make sense. Sometimes walking away is the financially rational choice, even though it's painful. Fifth, plan for what comes next. If you lose your home to foreclosure, you need a plan for where you'll live, how you'll rebuild your credit, how you'll eventually get back to homeownership. It's not the end of your financial life, but it will have impacts for years. For everyone watching this, understand that Florida's foreclosure crisis is a warning. This is what happens when climate change is ignored, when insurance markets are mismanaged, when housing bubbles are allowed to inflate unchecked, when government fails to protect citizens from predatory practices and systemic risks. What's happening in Florida can happen elsewhere if we don't learn the lessons. DeSantis' desperation is palpable because he knows this crisis defines his governorship. He'll be remembered as the governor who presided over a housing catastrophe, who watched families lose their homes by the thousands while offering no real help, who blamed everyone except himself for a crisis his policies created. That's his legacy, and no amount of desperate spin will change it. Thanks for watching. If this video exposed the reality of Florida's foreclosure crisis, share it with everyone you know. Drop a comment about your experience with foreclosures in your area or what you think should be done. And hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep covering this crisis and demanding accountability from the politicians who caused it. See you next one.